Hi, gang. Donna here. Today's guest is Alonzo Richardson. He is the host of the Back Look Cinema podcast with Zach and Zoe. Today's Better Two moment takes us back to a critical time in his life when he could have chosen to continue college, but he wasn't sure how to do it. So he ended up joining the military, and that takes us on a completely different path than what he originally had planned. So stay tuned and listen. It's a very interesting story. Hi, Alonzo. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. So I want to go straight to the better two moments. So you could have chosen to continue your college education or not. Firstly, let's go to why you wanted to be, what were you majoring in college?
Well, I went to a community college.
Mm-hmm.
So, we couldn't afford to go to 4-year college right away. So, my mom and I, we decided we would go to uh, Prince George's Community College. It's a 2-year college, and I had gotten like tiny scholarships for it. So we had started off there. So they didn't have like a major
Uh-huh.
per se. You could get a 2-year
Associates?
they call it an AA degree. I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah, associate's degree. There you go. So I could have gotten an associate's degree there. I did go there long enough, but I didn't want to spend money on classes that I didn't need because I wanted to major in graphic design, and I didn't want to like spend money on classes that wasn't towards that. That's why I never wanted the AA degree. So so basically I was there for like 2.5 years, and after that I'm trying to figure out like how to transfer to a 4-year college, and I didn't go to a guidance counselor. I wasn't sure how to figure that out. I didn't have the proper guidance. Like my mom didn't go to college, so she didn't know what to do,
Right.
and I didn't get new advice from her. So college is like a 4-year college is very expensive, and I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, and that was like my major concern. And I could have gotten a college loan, but I was never mindful about how college loans work. I didn't ask anybody about it. I just like stood there in the stupor because it's like when I was that young, I didn't realize I could ask questions and find stuff out. And I
Mm-hmm.
never asked those questions, and I didn't know how to find stuff out. So I would just basically kind of knowing that there were certain steps I could take, but not exactly knowing how to take those steps or the consequences of those steps. I didn't know how college loans work. I didn't know that I could pay it off after I go to college or that sort of thing. And I was really worried about the burden of a college loan. So that was the main reason that I didn't take the step to go to transfer to like a 4-year college and get the degree I wanted. As I couldn't because I couldn't figure it out. I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't know who to talk to, and I'm not sure I would have listened to them if I had talked to them. So
Well, and that's a big thing, especially being a younger person. You don't always want to listen to the advice given to you. You're like, yeah, yeah, right, I know it. Um,
right.
so what did you end up doing? I mean, did you pursue your graphic design
So at the
choices?
time, I here's the funny thing that happened. So at the time, I was just working. I don't know if it was part time or full time at a pizza restaurant. So I was just working there, and I'm staying at home and like going to school part time. Or I may have stopped going to school. I'm not exactly sure what I was doing. I think it was like in between school. So it was like after the semester ended, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So I'm sitting at home one day watching TV and the phone rang. And, back in the old days, those old phones, there was no caller ID or anything.
No.
So you answered every call,
Yes, yes,
the
yes.
landline. So I answered the landline, and it was like 1992 or 93, something around there. The Army recruiter called, and he had called for my brother. And we had gotten to talking, and he had asked me like if I'd be interested in joining the army or whatever. And in the course of the conversation, I asked, well, is there a program where I could draw in the army where I could, be in the army as an artist? Because I knew that there were like journalists in the army, and there were, all different types of jobs in the army. And so I was wondering if that was available. And he's him being a recruiter is like, yes, yes, of course there is.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
We
I,
just want your body.
and
We
so
don't
I
care. We'll
I
tell
I
you
go
anything.
to
Uh-huh.
right, right, right. So I go to the recruiting station and thinking that I knew that I wasn't sure. No, I'm not going to say I knew anything. I wasn't sure what the path would be to go into being an artist in the army. But I go into the recruiting office. I set an appointment with I think it's called the MEPS station, whatever the station's called, where they test the recruits' aptitude. So I go there and I take the test, and and they ask a lot of like math questions, and they ask a lot of which I'm not very good at, and then they ask a lot of mechanical questions, and I don't do mechanical stuff. At least I didn't do it back then. I don't know anything about cars or working on engines. I'm not an engineer. None of that stuff. That's all beyond me. And so I basically tanked that part. And when I was done, there were three jobs that were available to me. The first was uh, an infantryman because everybody qualifies to be an infantryman. It doesn't matter.
Unless you're flat-footed or have some kind of health issue, yes, that's the case.
Well, yeah, but if that was the case, they wouldn't take me at all.
Okay.
So everybody that they take qualifies for infantry. If you can't qualify for infantry, then they don't really want you.
Okay.
The second one was for a cook, but I had been like in a pizza restaurant for I don't know, like 5 or 6 years. So that's not something that I really wanted to
No.
investigate. So the other was a truck driver. So I was like, well, let's see what that's about. Let's choose that one. I had no idea what that would mean.
Oh
I just
boy.
knew I didn't want to be a cook or an infantryman, and the job that I wanted was not here, and that's what I did. So I went on ahead and so that basically was the divergence. I was going to go into the 4-year college, or I was going to go into the army, and I didn't know how to pursue my college aspirations. So by chance, almost, I ended up going into the army, and so that was the huge divergence. I never did get to be a graphic artist in the army. Never
No, but
happened.
let me ask you this: after you were done with the army, did you go back to school?
I should have, but I didn't. I didn't know how to because for some reason I was still in that state where I didn't know that I could do a thing. Like, for example, there are sergeants in the army, so that's basically a higher rank than a private or a corporal. You go, but it never occurred to me that those were ranks, those were advancement, that you work long enough or you work well enough, then you would get promoted, and then you would get promoted again. I didn't know that was a natural course. I thought that was something that was unattainable. I had no idea that was something that was like something a rank that you would get in the regular course of being in the army. I would see stuff and I would think that they were unattainable, or certain jobs. Like I remember talking to this about somebody else, like being on the radio. I didn't know that was a job that people studied for and did. I thought that just happened magically. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it never occurred. So I was still in a state where I didn't know how to go back to school. I didn't ask the right people. I didn't go and seek counseling. I didn't do anything that would help me towards that goal. So I didn't, as a result, I didn't go back to school because I think the GI Bill was attainable, but I didn't know how to access it. And then I didn't talk to anybody about accessing the GI Bill so that I could go back to school. So I was still and I could have did it perfectly. I was still living at home. I was in the National Guard. I wasn't in the Army, so I could easily have gone back, access to GI Bill, gone and transferred to a 4-year college, and continued my aspirations of being a graphic artist. But it's just for some reason I couldn't figure out how to do it, and I didn't know who to ask. And um, I was saying I didn't know how to ask the right questions. I didn't know who to ask. There were counselors available, but I just never uh, persisted in asking how to, access the GI Bill, how to go back to school. Like, I still had my college transcript and whatnot. I could have still applied to some of the local colleges because I live in a metropolitan area. There are a few colleges around where I could have gone to college from home, but I just never tried hard enough. It seemed at the time that like I had got out of basic training. I was in the Army Reserve, so I was only going to drill like 2 days out of the month, like one weekend a month,
Yeah.
and then it would be 2 weeks out of the year. So I didn't know how to uh, ask the right questions. I didn't know that I could ask somebody to help me get to where I wanted to go. So
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just still dazed and confused at the time.
Do you think any of it had to do with pride?
Not really. I was just not smart. That's like I was book smart, but I
Mm,
wasn't like street smart. It may be that I was not ambitious enough to do those things that I wanted to do. So
okay.
I couldn't or I another thing I was worried about, I guess I was worried about working and having enough money to, like pay for basic meals or whatever to get through school or paying for the books. Cause it's like you growing up in poverty, you're always worrying about the cost of things. And that's definitely one of the main concerns that I had.
And
So
poverty. They say poverty thinking keeps you down, and you continue to think that. And in a certain aspect, it does. And I mean, I've talked about going to Catholic school before. I went to an all-girl Catholic school my first 2 years of high school, and my friends had brick homes, and my friends had really nice cars and everything. Meanwhile, my grandma and I are taking a bus, the public bus, to go to the grocery store, and then taking a taxi, or going to the laundromat to wash our clothes, walking there. So while all my other friends are all living the high life, I'm sitting there, trying to act it, but dealing with real
right, right,
life.
right.
So I mean, I get the poverty thinking. I get it, and you don't think it's attainable because it comes. Dare I say, does it come down to your self worth? That you're feeling maybe you're not worthy enough to try to do this. That it's unattainable.
I mean that might be the case. I couldn't answer. I don't know if I felt unworthy. I do know that when I was growing up, I was shy. I was an introvert, and so I just did what I was told. They didn't ask any questions. I wasn't forward a lot of times, So that made, and I did have low self esteem. I did have, it's like it was pretty bad.
Well, and see that right there tells you why you didn't go after it, because if you're shy and you have low self-esteem, you had to be terrified that you were going to ask something and somebody was going to look at you and go, "What, are you stupid?" And I'm not saying you were, but I'm sure in the back of your head somewhere you had somebody say something to you like that during your lifetime.
Oh yeah, plenty of times. But mostly it's more like um if it felt like it was going to be too much trouble, I wasn't going to do it.
Okay.
I was not I was not about trying too hard to do anything really. So so that I think that had a lot to do with it.
So after your 4 years in the reserves, what did you end up doing?
Oh no, I so yeah, it's if I was a writer, my life would probably make an interesting novel, but I don't know how to write. So what actually happened was I ended up transferring from the reserve to the National Guard, and I forgot what my reasoning was. I have no idea why. I think it was because um, the reserve unit. It's like I live in the Washington D.C. area, so um, the reserve unit was further up north in Maryland. I can't remember exactly where it was, but it was like about an hour away. I needed my mom's car to get up to the unit, so I had to borrow the car for like 2 days for it to go. Right, I would take my mom's car for 2 days to go to the drill, and then I would bring it back. But then it was I think I found out somehow that there was an army unit that was closer to me that was actually in Washington D.C. and they were a transportation unit, and the unit that I was a part of in a reserve was not. The other unit was a National Guard unit, so I will have to transfer services to go to the National Guard to join that transportation unit. And it made sense to me because I was a truck driver. So
Yeah.
I was with them, and I think I had to sign a new contract. I don't exactly know how that goes. I don't remember. So anyways, so now instead of in a reserve, I'm in the Army National Guard. It's pretty much the same. The only real difference is that the reserve is basically funded and operated by the federal government, and the National Guard is uh, basically run by the state. So you hear troops getting called up for disaster relief or something. It's usually the state that's calling activating their National Guard under the guidance of the governor.
Okay.
So um, at that time, my current partner, I remember this is, I think in 1993, my current partner, she was in the regular army and she had been stationed in Hawaii. And she asked if I wanted to live over there. Like we had a relationship when she was stationed in Virginia and we were together for some months. And then like she called me like, I don't know, maybe a year later after I was in the army and everything, asked me if I wanted to live in Hawaii. And Hawaii, that sounds exciting and exotic. I was like, sure. So she basically helped me move to Hawaii. And
Nice.
I switched the National Guard unit from Washington, D.C. to Hawaii. And so, we stayed and lived together in Hawaii for like 10 years. And at that, I'm still in the National Guard at that time. And at the time that I came over, she was in the process of getting out for medical reasons. She had developed, what was that? Diabetes. She had
Okay.
type 2 diabetes. So she got that while she was in the army. So they're giving her a medical discharge. And so that happened and we just basically stayed there for about 10 years. So we stayed and it's like at this time I totally given up, not given up, but just never even thought about uh going back to try to go to school with that because now I needed to because Hawaii is a little bit expensive. So now I'm just concentrating. We're both concentrating on just working so that we can live in Hawaii. And so we stayed there until and then at that time, my son was born, her daughter came to live with us, we had fun with some of the things that the touristy things and the local things that we got to do while we stayed there. So it came to pass that the Iraqi war happened. This is after 9/11.
Yeah.
So, rumors are going around, are they going to activate us or not? But it's like, this is a full scale uh, business right here. So everybody was all the units were getting activated. All the National Guards were getting activated like a couple at a time. So finally our turn came. And I don't think the Hawaii National Guard had been activated since the Vietnam War, something
Wow.
like that. It had been a long time. It's like you had at least a generation of soldiers that go through the National Guard, never seen any kind of conflict or anything. It was just like a
Wow.
regular job, just something that you
Yeah.
did. So now we're getting activated. We get sent to Kuwait and then we get sent to Iraq. We're part of what they call OIF 3, and I think that's Operation Iraqi Freedom Part 3. That's
Wow.
it's like the movies with the army. So I was there for a year activated. So while I was deployed, she uh the rest of the family moved to Georgia, where her family stay at. So so after we were returned to Hawaii, I had to pack up like the rest of the stuff and get it ready to move to Georgia. And then we eventually ended up in my ancestral home in Washington, D.C. So
Wow.
that's been my journey. And we came, oh yeah, we moved in my ancestral home of the Washington, D.C. area. So in actuality, to be totally fair, my ancestral home is actually somewhere in North Carolina, South Carolina, but I've been in DC most of my life. So
Understand.
so that's where most of my mom's side of the family is. It's like my mom's there, most of her sisters there, my uncle's here. A lot of my father's side of the family's here. So I'm back here. And moved here because I wanted to be able to visit my mom more often. I see my brothers or whatever, but as it turns out, don't visit my mother as often as I thought I would.
No, it never
just
works out
just
that way.
right. Just last week, she asked me, when's the last time you talked to your mom? And I was like, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, maybe. And then we tried
Yeah.
to call her. We tried to call her and her phone was off. It went straight to voicemail. So it's like, she's on my plan. I gave my mom her phone. She's on my plan. But half the time I try to call her, we can't get through. We don't know why.
Well, the battery could die. We forgot to charge it. All
Yeah.
those.
Right. All right. Yeah, I guess she still doesn't know how to operate a mobile device.
It happens. My father-in-law, before he passed, he was amazed when I we were able to talk hands-free in the car on the phone to
Right,
his
right.
daughter. He's like, "Wow." I'm like, "Yeah." So in Kuwait, did you see any action, or was it just you were just there to keep the peace?
Well, you know that TV show MASH?
Uh huh.
Yeah, that was us, except without the medical trauma. That was us.
Okay.
So in Hawaii, we are what they call a supply and transportation unit. So we have supply where we supply other units with their equipment and whatnot. And we have transportation. So we have like we have two platoons of truck drivers. So it's like 140 people. We have lots of trucks. So the first thing that was supposed to happen is that because they didn't exactly know what our mission profile was, but since we're a transportation unit, uh, the higher ups made a decision to ship all of our trucks that we were driving in Hawaii to Kuwait. And and it was funny, right? Because they would always tell us that the equipment that you train with will be the equipment that you go to war with. So you should take care of your equipment. And we're all half
Oh,
believing, and it's like, oh my God, we're taking these same old crappy trucks to to Iraq to fight to serve in a war. And
wow.
so most of these trucks were I guess you can think of them as giant pickup trucks. So you've
That
seen them in the movies where they've got the six wheels and they've got the tarp that covers the bed of the truck. That those are the trucks that we're driving mostly. So so they ship all of these trucks to Kuwait. They find out what our mission profile is. Turns out we would not be doing a lot of transportation. What our mission was is that we were supposed to take over for, I forgot, whatever the previous unit was. It was a regular army unit, and their mission was to guard the basically the perimeter of the Iraqi air base. I forgot. I think it was Balad. I don't know. It was Balad Air Base or Balad Airport. It was some kind of uh, Air Force base, and that was near Balad. So we're we the army had taken over that base like a couple years ago. So the perimeter had to be guarded by soldiers. So our unit was to provide take over that mission. We had a medical unit in our battalion, so the medical unit would be transferred to, I guess, Kuwait Hospital, or no, not Kuwait, Balad, that whatever the hospital was on the air base, and then the rest of the unit. I think the maintenance unit would still be doing their job as maintaining trucks or whatnot, but everybody else, they were going to be serving the perimeter. So our in my company, we guarded the front gate. So we took over from the and originally it was um, us and Iraqi soldiers, the Iraqi soldiers that the army was retraining. We were joint protecting the front gate. So and we renamed it Anaconda. That was the code name. So we had this long approach to
So there was a long approach.
right. So there's a long approach, and so we could see like for miles if anybody was approaching in any direction. They gave us this equipment where you could, of course, we had night vision equipment so that you can see in the dark, but also we had this. It was like an extra bright flashlight. It would you couldn't look at it with your naked eye, or you would go blind, and it would put this filter on it. So when you shine it at night, you couldn't see the beam because of the filter, but with your night vision goggles, it lit up everything like as though you had a spotlight from a helicopter. That's
Wow.
how everything was lit up. So that we had neat stuff like that. So yeah, that was our job. We're guarding the perimeter. The only action that we saw was every once in a while Iraqi insurgents would send mortars over the perimeter fence, or it's like a wall. So they would send mortars over the perimeter wall. So it hit inside. They couldn't aim. So it would just hit anywhere. They would just basically hit indiscriminately, and then they would run away. So I don't think I've never been told that these people have ever been captured because they would just shoot and they would run
And run.
away. So it was and so that was really the only action. And it's funny because at first they would send mortars over, and then like the protocol was you would put on like your protective vest, grab your weapon, get your helmet, and you would run to they had these concrete tunnels. They weren't underground. There was above ground tunnels that you would run into, and you would basically wait until they stopped with the mortars, and then you would just go back to sleep. And that lasted for about a month, and then that got old. So whenever they did it, we just stayed in our bunks. It was like, well,
Wow.
if it hits, it hits, because I
Wow.
don't. And nobody ever got hit.
Good.
So that's awesome. And it wasn't like continuous. It was like every once in a while something like that would happen. It was like a storm. Every once in a while a storm would happen. Yeah, they would send a couple mortars over, and then it would stop. So since we were convinced that they didn't have anybody on the inside revealing our location, since they couldn't target us, we didn't find it necessary to get out of our most comfortable sleep, and then and go find our gear and go under the concrete, which wasn't really that effective anyway, and wait for them to stop shelling, and then they're not even shelling, they're just throwing mortars, and then go back to our bed. So that was a lot for us, and we stopped doing it. So
I'm glad you
none of us
guys were
saw
safe.
actions. Yeah, there was an adjacent unit that sort of kind of saw some action, but not really. Maybe a couple of shots fired. The most traumatic thing that I saw was they had uh they had to bring in an Iraqi officer because he had been shot up and he was covered in blood. I only got a glimpse of him. I was on duty that day. And they just rushed him through, and so to get to the hospital. But that was his action. That wasn't ours.
Yeah.
We just reacting to something that somebody else had experienced. I remember a friend of mine. Well, this is when we were really trying to win the hearts and minds of the Iraqi people. So we had a lot of Iraqis coming inside the base. There were a lot of Iraqis working in the base. We had Iraqi translators to help us with our work. So you had a lot of civilians come in. Iraqi civilians were allowed their weapons. A lot of them had what you call it, like automatic weapons, like assault rifles. They had a lot of assault rifles. So this one particular guy that came almost every day, he had uh, a nickel plated AK-47, so with a matching magazine.
Wow.
And a friend of mine, he was fascinated with that weapon. So we were out on the furthest part of of the gate. So there's a road leading up to the gate. We're at the very first checkpoint. And so since he was fascinated with his weapon and he didn't think he was going to get caught, he asked the guy to see the weapon, and he's checking the weapon, and then he chambers around, he fires it off into the distance. He's like, yeah, it works, it's awesome. He cleared the weapon and gave it back to the guy. And then later on, one of our officers, he asked him, he's like, yeah, you're at the front gate, right? It's like, yeah. It's like, yeah, we saw like somebody fired off a weapon. What happened? It's like, oh yeah, it was misfire, sir.
Oh boy.
It was mashed. There was supposed to be no drinking in while we were in Iraq because, for religious purpose. We're supposed to be respectful to the people that live there, but people had alcohol shipped to them anyway because you couldn't buy it anywhere. So the
Yeah.
only way to get it is that it was shipped, and um, the most of the packages weren't checked, so it was pretty easy to get it. So some of these guys, when they got alcohol shipped to them, they hadn't drank in like months. They're used to drinking almost every day. They hadn't drank in months, like 3 or 4 months or whatever. So they get the shipment of alcohol, and one of the guys, he gets so drunk that he couldn't report for duty right away, and then he tried to put his trousers on, but he was putting them on. Well, he tried to put his shirt on, but he was putting them on as if they were his trousers. So he's sticking his legs through the sleeves of the shirt because he's so drunk. So one of the guys had to stay behind, and they had to help him get dressed. And I realized he was dehydrated because we're already in the desert. It's
Yeah.
already like 100 degrees, and so he was dehydrated because of alcohol. So um, whenever you have a sickness in Iraq, they say to drink water. You get stabbed with a knife, drink water, it'll get better. So they tried, they started feeding him water, having him drink water,
Uh-huh.
but it wasn't helping. He was still dehydrated. So they hooked up, like when somebody's severely dehydrated, the medics would come and then hook you up to a saline solution. So you would get basically water pumped directly into your bloodstream. And he had drained 2 bags and then they just sent him to the hospital to be treated for
Wow.
alcohol. And as far as I know, he didn't actually get in trouble for it. You know, I guess,
Yeah.
yeah, they basically looked after him. It was almost like we were in the army where it was also the mob. And even my commander, like when it in the speech he gave us, he was like, you know what the rules are. I'm not going to tell you or what the rules are. You know what the rules are. But you guys, you do what you have to do. But if you get caught, I'm going to do what I have to do. So
Oh, yeah, there's the warning.
right. So so that I mean I had many experiences like that. I basically tried to stay out of trouble. But yeah, there was hijinks, but very little action. Nothing to report home about.
But you should be thankful for that because I mean I know a lot of people that did see action that are just traumatized beyond belief now. So
Yeah, absolutely.
so
Yeah,
we
I can say that no one in my unit was traumatized.
that's good. That's very good. So when you got back stateside and you've moved to Washington D.C., so now what are you doing with your life? Are you still driving trucks
So,
or?
well, what actually happened was I'm looking for work. Well, my brother, you know, he knew that I would need work when I got back. So he was uh he was a construction worker. So he helped me get into the union.
Okay.
The union is decently strong in this area. So he helped me get into the union. So I became a construction worker. I was an apprentice. So I
Okay.
did that for a few years, and that was pretty good work. And then the economy crashed around I guess 2009
Mm-hmm.
is when the economy crashed. And because things don't happen all at the same time, it took a while for it to catch up to construction. So what happens is that people stopped wanting to build and renovate, so construction jobs became hard to get by. I was unemployed for almost an entire year, and
Oh.
unemployment, yeah, so unemployment started to dry up. So that is when I was still in National Guard. I'm trying to think which unit it was. Um, because I am kind of lost. Okay, I
Okay.
remember now. So when I got back, I had joined a unit that was in. I'm trying. It was near Baltimore, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most of the soldiers that were in that unit were from Baltimore. So they had mentioned that there was a program that would help soldiers become truck drivers. So they had did the first pilot program, and so they were going to do the second pilot program. Now the first pilot program was neat because you would basically go to the school full time, and the army would pay you to go. You're gonna have to like you didn't have to pay for the school, but you would have to like as far as subsistence and whatnot, that's all on you. So at the time I was still on unemployment, so I was able to go. So I went there. They taught us how to drive tractor trailers. I was able to graduate in spite of not getting everything correctly right. But I was
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that they passed me because I got because I was fairly good, but I would obviously need more training. So that's when I was recruited by a trucking company, and they'll get people that just graduated, and they'll put them in an advanced training program where they basically you're partnered with an experienced driver, and they would teach you more about driving. And so I went through that program, but I kind of flunked out of that first program. So and I had to go through like two different drivers because the first driver, I think it was, I don't know if it's around the holidays or something, but he was going on vacation, so he had to pass me off to a second driver. And the second driver, uh, I was with him until I had finished the program, but he didn't feel I was good enough. So that's when so I washed out, and I was terminated by the first trucking company. So then I went and applied, and I got a job at a second trucking company, and that's the company I work for now. So they had given me some additional training, so I was able to pass that training, and I've been driving trucks since then. So that's
My
basically the journey.
my mom was a truck driver, and my ex husband became a truck driver. So I I know the whole the whole gamut, which I'm sure a lot of the listeners don't know, but yeah, I know about you get hired with a company, you're going through training, and you're going to go through training just like with any other job. I mean, even a grocery store clerk, you
Right.
used to have to go through training. I'm sure you still do. Um, but now, besides that, now you have a podcast called the Backlook Cinema Podcast with Zach and Zoe.
Yes.
So
So
what made you
that
decide to
was
do that?
go ahead.
What made you decide to do it?
So what happened was even back then I listened to a lot of podcasts. I kind of discovered podcasts by accident. So one of the shows I listened to is it's well now it's called Fat Man Beyond. So it's two guys, Mark Bernardin and Kevin Smith. I don't know if you know it, any of those guys. So Kevin Smith is a director. He directed Clerks, and as he would tell it, he's been living off of Clerks ever since. I mean, he's made a bunch of movies since then,
Yeah.
but that his Clerk is his real claim to fame. So so he's also a comic book writer. He directs a comic book affiliated television, and Mark Bernardin is a writer. He's written comic books, but he's mostly like he began as a journalist, and but now he's more of a television writer. So I started following him on Twitter, following both of them on Twitter. So it came to pass that I don't know if it was on the show, on the podcast, or something that he tweeted. But during the pandemic, he started to do things with his son. So one of the things he did was he did a food bracket. They would go to fast food restaurants and rate the best like food fast foods in their area, like the best hamburgers in their area, and it would go and they had like a bracket, like a sports bracket, and rating different fast foods. Another thing that he did with his son is that he started watching movies with his son. That his son is a teenager, his son had never seen these movies, right? So they're
Mm-hmm.
like older movies that he loved when he was growing up. And I thought, well, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. And I'm working. It's like, so I'm not like out of like sitting home bored. It's not like it's activity that I needed to do, but I thought it would be a neat idea to bond with Zach, to go on ahead and watch some of these movies that he couldn't have possibly seen. Like some of them he has seen, like he's seen a movie like Blade with
Yeah.
Wesley Snipes, and he's seen The Mask with Jim Carrey. So he's seen some of these movies, but there's such a plethora of movies out there
Yeah.
that he could witness. So and one of the first movies I thought of to watch with him was Highlander,
Okay.
because my son is a lot like me. I can see if he was not like me, if he liked totally different things, like if he was a dude that was into sports, it's not something I would consider doing, or even making a podcast with. I would, it would be something else. But he likes a lot of the things I like, but he likes them in different ways. So he likes the same movies, the same types of movies that I like. He likes anime, uh but he likes, right, so he likes anime, I like anime, but he likes different anime than I like. And we both like animation in general. Actually, he had turned me on to some animation. Like I had not been watching Rick and Morty, and now it's one of my favorite shows. He had turned me on to that. So one of the movies, the first movie I thought was Highlander. I was like, I know I loved Highlander once again. I was absolutely obsessed with it. I watched everything Highlander that I could find, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I watched all the sequels. They were all bad, but I would watch another sequel hoping that it would be better than the last movie. It was never good. They were never ever good.
What do you mean,
The only
like
thing,
the planet Zeist?
yeah, I watched that one. That was horrible. I hate that. I hated that it seemed like they ruined the mythology. It's like, why would you, why are
Yeah.
there aliens? I don't like that at all. So so they never the and when I watched the movie this time with him, I realized why all the movies were bad. But one was halfway decent. Not it wasn't a movie, it was a TV show. The TV show, I really liked the series. I liked Adrian Paul in that role as a different McLeod. So it worked for me. So so we watched it, and I asked him how he liked it. He said he really liked it. I was like, I knew you would like it because I liked it. This is no way. Then another movie we watched was I'm trying to think. It's the one with Arnold Schwarzenegger when he goes to Mars.
Total
Total
Recall.
Recall.
Yeah.
Right. So we watched Total Recall. I loved this movie when I was growing up, and I knew that he would love it, and I was right. He loved it, and we watched another movie. And after that, I was like, we should do a podcast. He's like, no. He was totally against it. And so I kept so every time we do this, I kept encouraging him. And then I did this big presentation, like a, what do you call that? It's
PowerPoint.
it's kind of like a PowerPoint. Yeah, I did a PowerPoint presentation on why it'd be great to make a podcast. So he finally decided to give it a chance. And that was in November. We did our first episode. We did what was our first episode? I want to say it was Hunt for the Red. No, was it Hunt? Nope, it wasn't Hunt for the Red October. I can't. Oh, I remember now. It was uh Rambo. It's not called Rambo
Rambo First
2.
Blood. First Blood.
Not Rambo first. The second one. What's the second one called?
Oh, I
It's
don't.
not called for. It's called. It's called. It's not called Rambo 2. Yeah, yes, it is. It's called Rambo First Blood Part 2. See, the reason I wanted to get the name right is because there is problem with the convention of naming Rambo. The first movie is called Rambo First Blood. The
Uh-huh.
second movie is called. No, actually, it's not even called Rambo. The first movie is called First Blood. Just First Blood. That's the first movie. They didn't intend to make a sequel. The second movie is called Rambo First Blood Part 2. That makes total sense. You have First Blood, you have First Blood Part 2. The third movie is called Rambo 3, which makes no sense because there's no Rambo 1, there's no Rambo 2. There's First Blood Part 2, and then the third movie should have been called First Blood Part 3 or something thereof. But they totally dropped First Blood from the title. They just call it Rambo 3 because the producer's like, you know what this is. You don't have to explain anything to you. Yeah, you're not stupid. When this is the third movie, it has Rambo. We're going to call it Rambo 3, and it's been Rambo since then. So I didn't want to start with First Blood. So we started with Rambo First Blood Part 2. And that was the first episode of our podcast. And we've been able to do it almost every week ever since then. So that was the and he's still resistant, but he's he's at least compliant.
Compliant is good, and I mean,
Right.
you get to spend some time with him. You get to watch movies and talk about movies, and you invite people on. I was lucky enough to be part of that, so it's a good podcast. It's fun, and I think being able to talk to a different generation about movies you love, especially since it's your son, it's an adventure. Because you can see it through his eyes, fresh eyes.
Right,
Something.
right,
Highlander. When you look at Highlander, I like the first Highlander. The first Highlander to me was great. You had Sean Connery, you had, the guy who did it was a video director. So this was his
right,
first foray
right,
into movies. And I mean, it was a
right,
good
right,
movie for what it was. But that's the
right,
thing. You have to accept it for what it was.
right. Have you seen it recently?
I would say about 10 years ago. About
Okay,
10 years ago.
so you probably saw the original version.
You asked me if I saw the original version. Yes, it was. I don't
Right, right.
I don't think
So
I
you said you saw it. You
yeah,
said you saw it 10 years ago.
about that.
So right. So they have a director's cut of Highlander. So what happened is that they had replaced all of the original versions with the director's cut. So it's kind of hard to see the original version. So when I watched it last year in November with my son, there were some scenes that happened that I don't remember. So in the first scene, he has a sword fight with this guy that, he's at a wrestling match, and then he goes to the parking garage, he has a sword fight. And then during the fight, this guy does a bunch of flipping.
Hmm.
And I thought that was strange to start flipping during the sword fights. It didn't make any sense. and then and then there's another part where he has a flashback where he meets his secretary, and he met his secretary as a little girl during World War II. And he has this confrontation with a Nazi, and I think he kills the Nazi officer or whatever. And so it turns out that the flips and that World War II uh, footage was an addition. That was part of the director's cut, and I never even know. I just thought it was a part that I didn't remember. As it turns out, no, it's my memory is fine as far as Highlanders goes because I've seen it a bunch of times. It was just something that was added. That's the only version you can see now. It doesn't make the movie worse. There were it was never Highlander was never going to make sense. It's just a fun movie to watch.
Right.
Right. And so what happens is that what I realized watching it this time is that um the reason that the sequels don't make sense is that Highlander is a self-contained movie. It was done. Like, so the object was to kill all the other Highlanders, and you would get the quickening and you would get the prize.
Right.
The prize is that you know everything, or you know how people are feeling. You have a type of insight that is required to unite people. And uh Connor McLeod, he got that at the end of Highlander. So that's it. So going beyond that doesn't make any sense, because so there shouldn't be any other Highlanders. So that's why they made Highlander 2 the way it was. They decided, well, all the Highlanders are dead on Earth, so they're aliens, and so more of them can come to Earth. So that's why they made that movie like that. So the sequels don't make sense because they shouldn't have any more immortals, so to
No.
speak.
My my
Right,
my
right.
my husband used to always make fun of. He always would fake the Sean Connery accent and talk about the planet Zeist. Because
Right,
we
right,
were talking
right,
about how bad that movie was. Like the first one was, it was good. It was good. It was nice. Everything was contained. Some of the visuals, like when the quickening happens and the breaking of the glass. I mean, there's some powerful visuals there. There's also some
right,
cheesy visuals when they're in Scotland, and yeah, I mean, there's some, but it's a good movie. It takes everything, wraps it up in a nice bow, and so
right, right,
so
right.
I have to ask, what would be some other movies that you really want to watch with your son that he's resistant to? Maybe that's a better question too. That he's just like, oh no, there's no way I'm gonna watch that.
Well, he's not resistant to watching the movies. He's more resistant to doing the podcast.
Okay.
So I we've had a great time with the movies. I've been very good at choosing the movies that I loved, and I know that he would love them. And I was going along pretty good, batting 1,000. But there's one movie where I could say that I missed. It was a miss because it didn't quite work out. So that movie was Romancing the Stone. Now, I remember loving this movie when I was growing up. I think I saw it at least a couple of times. I loved Kirk Douglas and Kathleen Turner and Danny DeVito. It was all great. I really liked it. So we watched it with my son. I was like, oh no, this isn't working out. This is more, it's way slower than I realized, and it's more of a romance than it was action. It was way more romance than it was action, and I didn't realize that, and he didn't appreciate that. So he said it was a good movie, but he just did not like the heavy emphasis on romance. I was like, yeah, I did. And now I confess, I didn't realize it was going to be that way.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be more like, Han and Leia, they had a romance, but it was way more action than it was the focus on their romance. And then, their romance is fun, like when Leia says, I love you, and Han says, hello. It was fun,
Yeah.
but it wasn't, it was a lot more serious than Romancing the Stone. So okay, I was like, okay, I'll take that hit. And then there were some movies that I was nervous about.
You disappeared, so there were some movies you were
Okay,
nervous about.
right. There was because I knew that they were slower. So what I was is that but I really liked them. So I was going to take a chance on these movies. So they were less about action and more about tension and drama. So one of these was Hunt for the Red October. It was heavily on tension and drama. And it turns out he was really into this. He was really into this movie. It was a great movie. So I was like, wow, I'm gonna show him all the submarine movies now. And another one that I was kind of nervous about was um oh, I can't remember what it was. Oh, I remember it. So it's more like historical drama. So there was one called A Soldier Story. So that was I'm 90% sure it was a fictional story. So that was I think his name was Howard Rollins. He was a actor that was on The Heat of the Night, so the TV show with
Yeah.
Carol O'Connor.
Yeah. I
Right.
know.
So Rollins, he was a black officer. He was like one of the first black officers, and I think this was in World War II. So there was a murder at a southern military base, and he was sent from Washington to the southern base to figure out this murder. So it was this high-ranking CEO or non-commissioned officer. I think it was a master sergeant. So the murder of this master sergeant that apparently everybody hated. So if everybody hated him, you had to figure out
Good luck with
who could have murdered him.
that.
Right. Who could have murdered him? Everybody hated him. So that was all drama. It's hardly any action. There was all drama. It's one of the earliest roles of Denzel Washington. And when he was up and coming, he almost didn't take the role, but when he saw how important his character was, he took that one. So he really liked that one, and I figured that he would like it because earlier he saw Straight Outta Compton, which is a documentary about, well, not a documentary, it's docudrama, I guess. What do you call those type of movies?
Yeah, docudrama's about right.
Right. So a docudrama about NWA. So he saw that, and he liked that movie. So if he liked that movie, then he would probably like A Soldier Story, since they're about the same pace. So, and he really liked that movie. So I guessed correctly on that front. So yeah.
Have you thought about Platoon?
I didn't see Platoon, so I can't do that one.
Oh,
There was
Platoon.
so right. There were so many great movies that I missed in the 80s and 90s. And I totally, it's like I would always plan on watching these movies, but I never got around to watching the
But
movies. So
but here's the thing. Maybe one or two episodes you should do this. Maybe one or two episodes you guys should sit down and watch a movie you've never watched.
yeah, I had considered that. I definitely considered that. We did I did do a special episode with him where because I really wanted him to get more involved. I want him to be comfortable with doing the show. So one time I was like, why don't you choose the movie this time? It doesn't matter. You can choose whatever movie you want. Just choose a movie. And he chose the original Space Jam. And my
Okay.
heart kind of sank a little. But
But it is timely
he
though.
loves that movie.
It is
Right. Well,
timely.
yeah, it's timely, and he loves that movie because that that's one of the movies that he really grew up on. I didn't realize that he loved it that much, but when you're a little kid, there's certain things that you absolutely loved, and
Yeah.
Space Jam is one of those movies where he absolutely loved this movie. He's not a sports dude, he's not like a Michael Jordan fan. He's a Looney Tune fan, and he really, that's one of the things that he grew up on that he really loved. So we did that. And so I considered doing like one of the movies that I have in the pipe is Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Hmm.
And I will confess, I don't think I've ever watched that movie from beginning to end. Just like you said about your episode was
Big
Big
Trouble
Trouble
in
in Little
Little
China,
China. Yeah.
and you never watched it from beginning, and it just happened to be on. And that was the first time you actually watched it from beginning to end. So I can say the exact same thing about Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I only seen bits and pieces of it, but I don't think I watched it from beginning to end. So I want to do that one.
I saw that movie at the theater, and at the time I was actually going to school with Richard, the kid who plays Richard Dreyfuss's oldest son. I was
Oh,
one of
okay.
his best friend. Well, his brother was one of my best friends, but we were all in school together. So he kind of disappeared from school. It's like, where'd he go? And then when we came back, everybody's like, oh, he was in a movie. He did some TV work too. So it was just kind of like, oh,
Right.
all right. So it was kind of cool, but he was kind of stuck on himself after that. But it was just
as it might happen.
yeah. I mean, you're that young. We were in New Orleans, so it's not like we were in Hollywood. So to be playing across Richard Dreyfuss at the time, that was a big deal. So I don't
Right.
blame him. I don't blame him. I mean,
Right. Well,
that's
I
big.
had a I would just, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
uh, um, I had a brush with an actor when I was in school. So our school was transitioning to what's known as a magnet school. So the magnet part was visual and performing arts. So you would get actors or like painters or whatever to apply to the school. And I think
So you were saying you had artists and actors apply to go to the school or to come to the school.
right, because it was transitioning. So I confess I don't remember the dude's name, but he was in a lot of plays, and I was a photography student, so I was sent to photograph these plays or whatever. And I had to photograph him to give him a headshot for he because he one of his first jobs professionally was a guest appearance on the Cosby Show as I don't know, somebody's boyfriend. So the computer loves us.
Yes, obviously. So somebody's boyfriend, that's where we were, and then it just
Yeah. Yeah. So he played somebody's boyfriend on the Cosby Show. And then later on he went on to act in I seen him the first time I seen him was he was playing a character on Agents of Shield, the Marvel show. But he's been on Angel, and he's been on like he's played a lawyer in a lot of TV shows. So he's
if you
so
want
I'm
to
glad
type
that
good.
no, I'm just saying I'm glad that he's able to achieve his dreams.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody wants to typecast me as a lawyer, by all means, let's go.
Right.
So, since we are having technical glitches, I guess it would be a time that we should be wrapping this up. Your podcast is out every week, correct?
That is correct. It's
So,
out every Saturday.
okay. And I will make sure to share some links, and I thank you for your time. Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Better 2 podcast. Your listenership is greatly appreciated. If you like what you hear, remember to hit subscribe. We also have our videos on YouTube. They're usually posted the same day as the podcast, and you should check it out. If you have a question or you would like to be a guest on the show, please drop me an email, and I'll be glad to talk to you about it. The email is Dauna, Dauna, at thebetter2podcast.com. Thanks again for tuning in, and catch you next time.